Now we are going on to special products in section 4. And here they will describe using the FOIL method. Now, FOIL is an acronym that simply means your first term, take the F, your outer terms, the O, the inner terms, the I, and the last, the L. Now, which are the first terms in a binomial? So you multiply those two. That'll give you the first term. What are your outer terms? Well, this one and this one. And that'll give you a 15x. Your inner terms, that gives you a 2x. And then your last, I like the way they set this up, by the way, you get a 5. Okay? So you were foiling. So another system that's often used, a line there, a line there, a line there, and a line there. Now FOIL is just a method of operation. In a sense, it's considered a special way to do it. And keep in mind that once you get this trinomial, later they're going to ask you to factor it back into what you have here. So we are undoing the FOIL. And they work it out very well for you and have it all detailed. So this one is done. So let's do the practice one. First, that will be x squared. Outers, a negative 5x. Inners, a positive 2x. And then last, a negative 10. So then we just add usually our common terms here, or like terms. But keep in mind, later we're going to do the opposite and factor this into that. Going this way is pretty straightforward if you know the steps of FOIL. But factoring it now takes a little bit of creativity. All right, they are showing you a model for example 2. Let's do the practice. Let's see, did we get it up high enough there? Okay, I think we're okay now. This times this will be 4x squared. Now, this times this, a negative 4x. Now my inners, this times this, will be a negative 9x. And then this times this, which is a positive 9. Grouping like terms, 4x squared minus 13x plus 9. Now, in example 3, notice you have a binomial, 2 of them, and then a 2 out here. So what you're going to do is FOIL these to get that, and then you apply the outer 2 through distribution to get that. So let's do the practice. This is going to be 3x squared. My outers, well, actually, as you get better at this, you can do this mentally. Your outers is a negative 1x. Your inners is a positive 15x. So this is going to be a positive 14x. I'm just doing this part mentally. And then I have this, which is a negative 5. So now I can multiply everything by 3, and I get 9x squared. And then 3 times this is a positive 42x minus 15. So again, you would FOIL this, 3x squared, a negative 1x, a positive 15x, ends up as a positive 14x, and then the last, a negative 5. Okay? Now, again, you could write this twice, but the way I'm going to strongly suggest that you do this is that special way, because they're going to show you this in a few moments anyway. Square that first term. That gives you 9y squared. Multiply these two terms together. That gives you a 3y. Double it. And square the last term. That's even shorter than doing the FOIL. Okay? And we'll do this one here too. So that would be 16x squared. A negative 4x, double it. And notice I have the wrong sign there, so I have to be careful of that. That was a negative 4x, so when I doubled it, you get a negative. And then this one is 1. By the way, in a perfect square trinomial, your first and last terms are always positive. Your middle term reflects the sign that you have there. Here we go. So they're saying there is a pattern. So when you square a binomial, and here's like sort of the general formula of it, there's a binomial that we're squaring. We square the first term, multiply these two together, get a positive AB, double it, square the last term. And this works out exactly the same. The only difference is if this is positive, your middle term is positive. If this is negative, your middle term is negative. This is a special product and is one that you should become familiar with. Okay? Now the key is if you recognize you have a perfect square trinomial, it's going to factor back into that, which is a good technique to have in your toolkit of things to do. Okay. Now here they've laid it out quite well. Let's just look at it. We're going to square that, t squared. Multiply these together, 2t, double it, plus 4t, square the last term. And they have that one right over here. Square the first term, p squared. Multiply these two, watching the sign, double it, Square the last term. This one, square the first term. Multiply these together, you get 10. Double it, get 20. Watching the sign. Square the last term. Square the first term. This is a little tricky because it's x to the fourth minus a negative this, double it, that'll give you 14 x squared y. Square the last term, 49 y squared. Practice this technique. It's going to be very useful, especially in your next course. Now, one of the common errors, by the way, is what is illustrated here. That students will say, oh, it's a perfect square. We're squaring a binomial. We're going to get this, but the middle term is missing. Okay? This is the correct one. And the same applies whether it's negative or positive. Okay, another special product here is the sum and difference of two terms. And let me just build this for you over here. So if we have x plus y times x minus y, notice the terms are the same, but one's plus and one's minus. This is multiplying the sum, this one, and the difference, this one, of two terms. Now we use the FOIL here, but something interesting happens. Let's just do it. This is x squared. Now our outers are a negative xy. Our inners are a positive xy. And our last is a negative y squared. Now notice what happens to our results of multiplying the outers and the inners. They're just opposites. They cancel out. So you get x squared minus y squared, or what we call the differences of squares. Okay? So when you multiply the sum and difference of two terms, you get the difference of perfect squares. The middle terms always cancel out. And another thing that they may or may not be introducing here that I like to do, these are referred to as conjugates. And I would put that word in my notes. So when you multiply conjugates, which are these, the middle terms always cancel out, and you end up with the difference of perfect squares. Conjugates, it's the very same terms, but opposite signs. Now, when you see you have difference of squares, that will factor into their conjugates. So again, we're trying to prepare you for what's coming. So these ought to be pretty easy. Now, notice here we have an example 6a, conjugates. So that's going to be x squared minus 16. But now we have to multiply it by 4. So this becomes 4x squared minus 64. And here, these are conjugates. So it's just going to be 36 t squared minus 49. Again, they're conjugates. X squared minus, now when you multiply that, that's 1/16. Conjugates, 4p minus q squared, and that's p squared too. So 4p squared minus q squared. Now are these conjugates? Yes. So it's going to be 9x to the fourth minus 25y squared. And remember, these are the difference of perfect squares. They will factor into their conjugates. Okay? And you'll have plenty of practice. And you can expect this on your test. Now, more often than not, you're going to have a mixed bag of things, as they show here. So one of the first strategies is you have to determine which method you're going to use. So for something like this, you'd say, well, I'd use the FOIL. Here I'd use that special way of multiplying. Here, these are conjugates. This is just a FOIL and kind of tedious, it looks like. And here I would use vertical multiplication. So I could go over all of these with you, but they're all done here, and you'll be needing to practice them anyway. But we've done this in pieces. Part of it is to recognize the special way and checking your work carefully to get the correct answers. All right. Now, of all of these, the one that's a little bit difficult, I think, well, let's do all of the practice because these were done up there. We're going to FOIL this in its regular way. So first, 4x squared. Now, when I do my outers, I get a negative 24. My inners, I get a positive 3, which gives me a negative 21x. So I'm doing that part mentally. And then my last is a negative 18. Now this one, I'm going to use that special method, square the first term, 49b squared, multiply these two together, get a negative 14b, double it, negative 28b, square the last term. This is a perfect square trinomial that will factor into this. Now these are conjugates, so that's going to give me x squared minus 0.16, because 0.4 times 0.4 is 0.16. Okay, this one I'm going to have to FOIL, and it's a little tedious, so let's do it very slowly. The first is going to be 3x to the sixth, just adding my exponents. Now my outers are going to be, I'm going to put it over here too, because I see this one's going to be hard. So I'm going to do my inners first. This is going to be a negative, 3 times 3 is 9 over 7 x to the fourth. Now I did the inners first because I see this one's going to be to the second power. So this is going to be plus 2x squared to the seventh power. And then I do my last, which is going to be a negative Can I cross cancel anywhere? No. So this is going to be 6/49. Okay. And then this one you can just do vertically. Well, let's do it vertically. So x squared plus 5x minus 2, and this is x plus 1. So this is a negative 2. This is a positive 5x, and this is x squared. X times this is a negative 2x. This is a positive 5x squared. And this is x to the third. So I get x to the third plus 6x squared plus 3x minus 2. And I would check my work too. Let me just check it here. This is good. This is good. I'm checking the signs as well. This is good. This is good. This is good. Remember, there's a 1 there. Put it there if you'd like. And that's good. Okay. Well, again, hopefully you're staying up to date with your practice in Quiz-Me's. Before you know it, we'll be having our chapter test.